should we give it a go? The series has a distinct style.
Much more exciting, putting people in amongst the action.
It's a fantastic shot. It's got to look like we were really there and could have really filmed it.
Two of the buzzwords were immersion and adventure.
Welcome. My name is Dan Tapster and I'm the showrunner for The Dinosaurs. And this is Beyond the Lens. Today I'm joined by some of the people who helped build the visual grammar of the series. We've got series director Nick Jordan, VFX supervisor Jonathan Privett, and our director of photography Jamie McPherson. And we're going to today just kind of talk about why the series looks like it does, some of the challenges that we faced in making it. I'm going to start with you, Nick, because the series has quite a distinctive visual style, very different from other programs in this kind of space. Can you tell us a bit more about that style, what it is, and why it's appropriate for this series?
Well, I think when we first were talking to Netflix about the show, two of the buzzwords were immersion and adventure. You take the audience into the space of the dinosaurs, not observing them, but actually living in their world, so you could really feel them, hear them, and experience them. And I think that required a completely new, fresh look at how we sort of positioned the camera and how it was directed.
So, Jamie, what does that mean for you?
In terms of cinematography, we were closer, we were wider, we were more in amongst, putting people in amongst the action, so getting closer to creatures. It was a much more exciting way of shooting it, much more camera moves, more dynamic moves, and much more immersive positioning of the cameras.
So as an example, in episode 1, there's a scene where you're running with these baby marsupials on the beach, and that ticks all of those boxes.
Yeah, that was great fun to shoot, wasn't it? We had a lightweight gimbal, and we were low to the ground, running along, chasing them down the beach. It was, really immersive, really dynamic.
Yeah, and technically quite challenging, sort of getting, these little dinosaurs are only 5 or 6 centimetres high, and getting the camera that low. I think we used a double stabilised system with a Steadicam arm, and we're working together on that. Jamie's driving the shot, I'm running with the camera, and it was really feeling and experiencing their world at their level. So it was cool.
So the series is, I suppose, in some ways, a follow-up to Life on Our Planet, and many of the same people worked on that. So how, from a stylistic, visual point of view, is it different from its predecessor?
And the main thing was for Loop 1, Life on Our Planet, we were cutting between dinosaurs, prehistoric life, and natural history. So we wanted those two styles not to jar, so we had to make the prehistoric cinematography fit with traditional natural history cinematography, so longer lenses, not being in amongst the action too close.
I often felt with Loop that it was filmed as though you had gone back in time, almost as though there was like a risk assessment for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we thought about Life on Our Planet, is that the whole premise of it was it's got to look like we were really there and could have really filmed it. And of course, in the Dinosaurs, we're not doing that. We're in amongst the action, stuff stepping over us. There's a place a cameraman would never be in natural history.
The shackles were off, really. I mean, that's the sort of expression we were using, that, in season 1 where we sent Jamie back, or as if we'd sent Jamie back with his long lens set, doing the natural history
back in time, doing the long lens observation, how you would film a wild animal. Here, you had all the Hollywood toys to be able to run, fly, swim, jump with them. So your imagination was the limit, really, of what we could do. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of comments online about how many camera operators were killed in the filming of the series.
6.
Have you got a good example of like a compare and contrast of those two shows?
I guess from Loop 1 we had a Tyrannosaur hunting Triceratops, and for that it's quite dynamic for natural history because it bursts out and we're driving alongside it and we're spinning around it, but we're always maintaining our distance. We're not right in amongst it. And then in the Dinosaurs, we've got Allosaurus hunting Stegosaur, and for that we are, inches away from them as they're fighting and moving around in much more dynamic moves. So, that's probably the biggest change.
I think there's even a bit where a bit of blood lands on the lens.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. We've gone full Hollywood style. It's very close. You see that you're right there as the dust comes out, and we wouldn't in the first series have put the Thagomizer right into the thigh and it comes out and you can see the blood splat and the scoop gets broken off in the fight. So there's much more interaction between the creatures themselves as well.
Is that a real headache?
Yeah, I mean, it represents a different level of challenge from Life on Our Planet, because obviously we are so close. If we take that example of the baby marsupials running along the beach, there's no way you can get away. I mean, if you were sort of wide on that, you wouldn't see anything, but their footsteps are right in front of you. You know, they have to kick up the sand, they have to leave footprints on the beach. And that goes throughout the series. There's interaction with water, there's fire, there's snow, there's all that stuff, and we're right in amongst it. So there's no hiding place, you know, from a visual effects standpoint. The creatures themselves also have taken a step change forward. We've spent more time on texturing and lighting. So I think it's you know, it's much more beauty work has gone into it and much more detail.
There's a lot of feedback about that already. People definitely comparing dinos with Life on Our Planet in a really favourable way, the VFX looking much better. Would you say that is because of interaction?
I think it is, because I think it beds them into the environment. And we also spent more time on key attributes of them. We went back and looked at in Life on Our Planet the things that were weaknesses, and we tried to improve them, both from paleontology standpoint. I think we had some feedback on that, and also from just how we did the shading models and the lighting. We crafted it more.
Do you find this harder to film? Because here you're right in the action and having to tilt up to where the Thagomizer might be and crash down as Allosaurus collapses.
Yeah, I think it was more fun to shoot. The blocking is great fun because we're running around pretending to be the dinosaurs and working out the choreography of the fight scene. And then, yeah, like you say, putting the camera from 6 feet up in the air to on the deck and doing really quick moves. So, yeah, it's great fun to shoot.
Jonathan brought a really cool tool along, which was an iPad with our asset. So with our dinosaur, we could hold up and see it in scale, in size, on location, which really helped you with the framing. So you sort of, yeah, that was a really useful tool.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be very hard without it, especially when you're close like that and the framing's so critical and can go off instantaneously if you get it wrong.
What other bits of kit do you take?
I mean, I'm taking stuff to capture the environment, of course, because these days, you know, we use physically plausible rendering, and to do that, technically speaking, we take a 360-degree picture of the environment, if you like. But not only do we do that at one exposure, we do it at a whole series of 8 or 10 exposures. So then when we light the scene, we're able to rebuild where each photon comes from in the scene. So you get an extremely accurate result from that. There is lighting on top of that as well, but it gets you 90% of the way there, because you are actually there effectively. That each photon that gets fired at the dinosaur reacts in a plausible way. So you do get a fantastic image. And that includes the way the skin reacts. So there's a lot of subsurface in the show, if you watch, probably more than we had in League 1, which is where the light actually penetrates the skin and is scattered and comes back in a visibly plausible way. If you shine a torch through your hand, it's effectively that, where you get that lovely sort of red glow, and you'll see that quite a lot in the show. I mean, the other critical piece of kit for getting the number of interactions we had, because we're wide, you see the feet of the dinosaurs on the ground all the time. And so what people don't think about is, how do you do that? How do you know where its foot goes? So we have a thing called LiDAR, which is basically a laser scanner that scans hundreds of thousands of points a second and gives us then a physical 3D model back in the computer to scale of where every rock and pebble and twig is in that environment. So when the animators are placing a foot, they actually have the real ground. You know, it would be impossible without it. I mean, you can do photogrammetry, but it's not nearly as accurate. So that, you know, we can do 1 millimetre accuracy with LiDAR. LiDAR does cost £60,000, so it's not a cheap thing to take out, especially when I've got it, you know, in 4 feet of water on its legs. Makes me slightly nervous, but we had a few instances of having to use it in the water, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah, so that's the Spinosaurus shot, when Spinosaurus comes around the corner. So all of that water that is moving, courtesy of its movement, that's all on you.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an impossible shot without the LiDAR, that Spino reveal, which is a fantastic shot. I did have a couple of sleepless nights, though. On the other hand, because we had the LiDAR, and it's in like a mangrove swamp, so there's all these tiny bits of detail going into the water. If you look at the edge of it, that is an incredibly hard thing to reproduce without the LiDAR. I mean, you know, when I looked at the LiDAR afterwards, you can see every one of those routes, and it allows the effect simulation to interact with them properly. Otherwise, you'd have had to just build a channel and it would look rubbish because the water just wouldn't react with the edges properly.
So when you get to location, obviously there's a huge amount of stuff that you've got to do, and you and your fellow directors are thinking about the story and all the rest of it, but you've arrived with a prescripted list of here's the shots that you need to tell the story. How much flexibility do you have? Because you're arriving on set for the first time, thinking, I'm not sure if that dinosaur would do the thing it's supposed to in the way it's designed at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. We get to location, and as a team, we're trying to work out, we've got our 35 shots, whatever it is, and we're trying to piece it together and then make it believable that those animals would be in those positions and would interact in those ways. So I love that part of the process. It's really good fun trying to figure out how to use the light, obviously with, it's going to be dawn or it's going to be dusk or whatever it's going to be, and how to bring it to life. And it does change, sometimes for the better.
Yeah, it changes. And I think it's very much determined by the location sometimes too. We do our best to scout these locations before, so we have a look at them. But for instance, when we film at the end of episode 1, we've got Lillian Sternus against the sort of big predator on top of the rock. That was really difficult because getting the crew up onto that rock was not easy. So we sort of used 2 locations to create one scene. And I think, it's being flexible and dynamic on location in order to sort of bring those storyboards alive. And sometimes you get a wild card thrown at you. So we were filming, I think, one scene in episode 1 where the mist came in and it became cloudy. It was like a nightmare. And so we thought, well, we'll go with this. We'll turn it into a moody, misty scene. And so that, in that situation, the location determined the tone, which wasn't something we could have planned, but it sort of worked out.
So there's a degree of flexibility, but when in that particular example, JP, how's that for you when you're planning to do it a certain way?
Yeah, well, obviously, that does have implications if suddenly it becomes a misty scene, because then we have to embed whatever the creature is in the mist, which does, obviously has a financial implication, actually, just because it's more complicated. So that's a discussion that we have to have. But when you're there on the ground and there's nothing you can do, if it's not sunny, it's misty, you've got 2 weeks or a week to film it. You have to go with that and work out the implications later.
It's interesting you say it takes a week or 2 weeks to get the shot. That might be surprising for people that it takes that long compared to, say, what Hollywood would do. Why is that?
I think when you arrive at a location, and we are a small team, we're not sort of 100 people, we're a less than 10-man team. We have to look at our storyboards, which we've obviously animated so we know what the sequence is, and then we look at the location and we block it. Jamie and I will block it through. So we'll look at every shot and go, where can we film that? Will that then work with the next shot from this angle? And so you sort of almost do a dry run through. And then you've got to wait for the good weather, because it might be you've got 4 days of cloud and you want it to be a sunny scene. And so there's to actually get the whole sequence, which could be 30, 40 shots, we tend to pick off, 3 or 4 shots a day?
Yeah.
So it takes 2 weeks because, each shot has to be such a perfect plate. It can't, and they have to match. If you've shot half of the plates in sunlight and then you've got cloud for a week, you've got to wait for the rest of the sunlight. So you're sort of captive by the environment as to what you can achieve. So in that sense, it takes a long time, but because we've got a small team, we can move from, say you've got a location where you've got a high location which might have bad weather and a location with good weather. You can be dynamic with a small team.
And we don't have get out of jail free cards quite as easily as, if you and I are having a conversation, we can just do the reverse camera when we're filming. We don't really have that luxury because everything is relatively dynamic. And yes, there's some close-up shots that you can pick off, but there's a lot of whys to think through and a lot of choreography of where things are geographically in relation to each other to make it all hang together. It's interestingly much more complicated than it would seem when you're trying to make a scene in a location make sense. So all the players have to be where they need to be at the correct time. It's quite a complicated process.
How much are you adding beyond just the dinosaurs?
We have 3 whole sequences that are fully CG, which we didn't do in Life on Our Planet. So that was a step change forward. So we've got a night scene in the rain with T-Rex and Anki, and we've got Plateaus in fire, so we've got a forest fire, and then we have a Magiosaurus on Hatsy Island in the sort of the rushes. And because there was so much interaction in all of those, I mean, it's impossible to film. We can't film in a forest fire and put dinosaurs in it. It was too dangerous for us. And we wouldn't be able to do the interaction. The same goes for night. To do that level of drama, we decided that we would do a complete CG environment. So the show does have that in a few places.
And it does sort of vary across the series as to how much CG there is versus the sort of background play. And I think the opening sequence is a really good example where we went to this incredible sort of mountainous plain area by a river for the opening sequence, which is when Pachycephalosaurus headbutts and has to run the gauntlet across this herd. And when we arrived on location, I mean, I'd scouted it and it was lovely. It was dusty, there was no grass anywhere. But when we arrived on location, you know, at the end of the summer, there was literally hundreds of acres of grass. It was everywhere, and we don't want grass. It wasn't around during the time of the dinosaurs. And so I think I found a strimmer in the back of the hotel and started strimming, and it was a bit hopeless, the whole scene, really, me trying to strim this.
Serengeti.
Yeah, the Serengeti, basically. So in that situation, you know, it's brilliant because we've got Jonathan on location who can give us the confidence that actually we can replace the ground. So when you watch that scene, the entire ground is VFX, all the rocks, and some of the trees are VFX. And that's a great sort of combination where you've got half the scene is VFX and then the background mountains are all real. So we had that flexibility. So it can go from full CG to a mixture to mostly environment with dinosaurs placed in.
Yeah, and we're still taking Jamie's camera moves out of a lot of those. So whilst even though we're replacing, you know, 70% of what's actually in camera, we are still using the moves that were shot.
Okay, let's do favourites. Each of you, what is your favourite shot in the series and why? Jamie?
I'd say, well, one of them, this guy. I think the pullback through Spinosaurus' jaws with the shark approaching, I love that. It's absolutely brilliant, very exciting and unexpected. And yeah, and as the trailer to the series is.
I was actually involved in that one. I was the shark.
You were the shark, yeah. You're swimmers, yeah.
Swim at pace. So there is footage of me in a wetsuit, which hopefully will be deleted. Nick, same question.
I think, interestingly for me, it's not a sort of drama predator shot. It's in episode 2 where we arrive with the giant sauropods who are sleeping in the forest. And you're right there with them as they stand up and wake up. And you get such a great sense of their scale. You can hear them breathing. You can really feel their sort of colossal presence. And for me, that really encapsulates what we were trying to do, is take the audience really close and personal with the dinosaurs. Also, that unleashes a sort of new sound palette. The visceral sounds you get of being closer are much more immersive, from the breathing, the snorting, the sort of swiping. It's not an all sort of chase scene, but it's a really powerful scene.
Oh, look, I love that. That's in, as you said, in episode 2, produced and directed by Jolyon Sutcliffe. And it's such a simple idea that we're just going to film these animals waking up. And I think it's almost one of the most original things in the series. So simple, but beautifully executed.
Very powerful.
It's great,
yeah.
JP, same question.
I think Hespo being taken off the beach by the mosasaur.
Yeah, that was
Which
memorable.
is a cracking, you know, it's dramatic. I think you're not expecting it. Although they will ruin it if you watch this and
Yes,
watch it, so it's a slight giveaway. But yeah, that's a fabulous shot. Encapsulates all the things. There's big simulations. You know, Hesperornis is a fantastic, you know, feathery, interesting creature that's an unexpected thing to be a dinosaur. It looks, in a way, very modern, which is contrasted with the mosasaur, which is obviously, you know, looks particularly ancient. So I think it's a fantastic shot.
I remember when we came to film that, we wanted to try and get some reference for the moving body of water that the mosasaur would be pushing. So we purchased one of those kind of underwater drone-y type things, and we were going to swim with that towards the beach, creating this bow wave. But when we got in the water, we'd obviously bought a slight knockoff one. The motors they had 2 motors, one either side, and one was wired the wrong way around. So all that happened was Darren just span in a circle. But
User error, probably.
It could have been operator error. That is true. That is true. But I think what I also love about that shot is I think there's a real temptation when you're making VFX shows like this to almost maximize your screen time, because VFX are obviously expensive and it takes a lot of nerve to say, instead of having 1 minute of a mosasaur swimming around or Hesperornis grooming itself, we're going to go for that one incredible shot. And I think that was something you really encouraged amongst the team, that every episode had to have kind of trailer shots.
Yeah, I think that's it. Is sometimes less is more, but when you get that killer shot, excuse the pun, it has to be stand out. And rather than having a lots of medium good shots, it's better to have a couple of absolute crackers, which I think is what we've done in between the sort of emotional, more tender sort of shots, which are lower budget to do because they're not fast and whizzy and chasey, and they don't cost as much. But I think we've got the balance right, where you really wait for those moments.
Yeah. And I think to answer the same question myself, I mean, it's really difficult to choose because I think there's 803 shots in the series, but so I'm going to pick two, sorry. So the first is beginning of episode 2 in the cave, where the smock, the ancient reptile, walks towards us, collapses, and then we tilt up to the sky and then come back. I think that's such an elegant thing, and I love the way those stars shoot across the sky, and then it comes back to the skeleton, of course. And my second is just the earthquake in episode 4.
Oh yeah, that's
I know that's someone's got to pick the low-hanging fruit, but I think particularly because the KPG event has been told quite a lot before, and everyone avoids the earthquakes because it's the hardest thing to do. And that shot is so good.
It's really good. If you've had 2, I've got one more. One of the things, it's a series of shots. It's a series of shots, which I think is very different to the first season, Life on Our Planet. In the Dinosaurs, we've worked really hard on the time travel shots, and we've sort of used Earth itself to sort of navigate those huge jumps in time. And so what we've done in the Dinosaurs, we zoom out to space and you see the stars starting to wield and the planets start to turn, and we see continents moving. And for me, those sequence of time travel shots are really unique and fresh for the series. And I think it sort of, it gives you a real sense of the enormity of that 170 million year rule. So, those are cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for that, actually, online. People really enjoying the kind of plate tectonic aspect of that. So, yeah, good shout. This is probably a question for you, JP. What shot gave you the most sleepless nights?
It's actually at the end of your episode, Nick.
It's the answer is Nick.
Yeah. It's the one that gave me sleepless nights was actually where Linny and Cernus and Smock are on the top of that mountain, and the volcano behind them has to erupt, go off, and then the pyroclastic cloud has to come and envelop them. And that was really tricky, because as you said earlier, those 2 locations were separate. Where we actually filmed the scene was not where we used in the wides, so there wasn't possible really to LiDAR it. So the topology of everything behind was unknown, so it had to be made up effectively. And just the complexity of doing a pyroclastic sort of cloud is hard. In a wide shot, it's quite long because it's quite far away. So yes, that took quite a long time to get right, because every simulation was 36 hours. So, the effects artist would set it off, and then you're waiting for 36 hours to see anything at all. And then if you don't like it, it's another 36 hours before you can see it again. So those sorts of shots are very hard to deal with and to iterate, because it's such a long time between, but you can't just go see it in an hour, give me 10 versions.
How do you know when it is final, when you're happy with it? What sort of detail are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of 36-hour versions. And of course, that's not the end of it, because that you just get the simulation. Then obviously it has to be composited on top of having the simulation, and the animation has to be in there as well to time up with it. So it does eventually. I mean, you do chip away at it. I mean, that's the honest truth, is each time you try and make it slightly better, and then suddenly you go, oh yeah, the way it goes over those mountains. I mean, I think that was the key moment, is you could feel the energy of it going over the back mountains, which we hadn't really captured before. So we put more stuff in the simulation, and that really made it, and a bit more flow out the top to give it the energy, because it felt like it was weirdly focused on the ground, and we put some more explosive elements into the sky, and that really sold it. I think you ultimately approved these things, and I think everyone just went, oh yeah, that is now it. So we just kept adding and adding until we got somewhere where we were all happy with it.
Do you find that there are certain shots where you've put all of this effort into it that maybe people don't even notice?
One good example of that is Tyrannosaurus. And so doing anything in the snow is complicated to begin with. But one of the things we did when we have it snow is it was landing on Utes. There's a couple of close-ups of Tyrannosaurus' face. And there was something slightly off about it. And we were like, do you know what it is? It's like the snow doesn't melt on his face. And so we went back and melted the snow. So if you watch, they stick on there, and then 3 or 4 seconds later, they will actually melt.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's things like that that maybe you don't know. I don't know, mate. If you watch it hundreds of times like we do, obviously, you know, so go, yeah, it'd be great if that could melt. It melts less on his fur, of course, because that isn't colder than his face. So those kind of details are things that I don't know whether subliminally they make it, but they're in there.
Yeah, they all help, don't they?
They all, definitely all help.
You mentioned, Nick, at the beginning that the goal was to feel immersive and for people to realise that dinosaurs were animals, not monsters. That sort of requires a level of emotion, I suppose. How do you bring emotion to VFX?
Well, I think it all starts with the intent of the scene. So then you have to feed in realistic behaviour for them to either overcome what they're being chased, or if they're looking for love. And so you start to create a realistic behaviour around their story. But to breathe that into life, the creature then their behaviour has to be believable. And to be believable, obviously you need them to breathe, move, act in the right way. But it goes beyond that, really. To really land the believability of a creature and its emotion is often about the eyes. And I know, Jonathan, you work really hard on the eyes.
Yeah, if you don't get the eyes right, it's killed stone dead, because you just don't believe it's alive. You know, we went back on at least a dozen creatures and redid their eyes 2 or 3 times. And so that is a critical thing. The rest of it follows on by just making it as plausible as possible. You know, we can't make them emote. We know they didn't do that. Yeah. So the eyes are everything.
And it really is, because they don't gulp, they don't cower. It's all about the eye.
And it's interesting, I mean, you'll notice there's quite a few shots in the series which are really tight in there. And that's because the eye was our power for emotion. That was how we're going to engage the audience.
But emotion must also come through camera work, through framing as well.
Yeah, we're very careful in when we're blocking it and working out the believable creatures that are behaving naturally, that aren't distracting, and also that the camera work isn't distracting the viewers. They're not aware of the camera. But yeah, we're trying to give as much emotion as possible to the scene with where we're placing the creatures in the scene, and then how we're moving the camera to sort of get people to really focus in on what we want them to feel in that scene, really.
So the end, I mean, spoiler alert, when we see that T-Rex die, for me, that really is incredibly emotional. Like, you feel that this 165 million year dynasty has come to an end, and you've shot that so simply.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Again, we're trying not to distract the viewer with jazzy camera moves. It's just letting them understand, letting them spend time with that creature that they've become, hopefully, bonded to. And
I mean, what from your point of view, what do you hope that people feel when they're watching that scene?
Well, I mean, that's certainly that end shot where you start very, very close with T-Rex. And again, it speaks to the sort of series style by which we wanted to get much closer in. So you're almost in the dinosaur space. So you can feel them breathing. I mean, in that scene, in the sound score, you can feel that last heaving breath of T-Rex. That shot as well is on the eye. Again, very powerful. So we've taken you much closer than you would ever be in any other natural history show to these key moments. So what we're hoping that level of intimacy, as it were, camera work wise, will really resonate people's emotions in a way that it just doesn't if you're, even in series 1 where we did Life on Our Planet, where you're observing from much further away. So here we've crossed the line into their personal space in a way that you can't help but being moved. There's a sort of level of awe and emotion that will come with that closeness of proximity, I think.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think also in that scene, slightly earlier, there is this moment where Pachycephalosaur is kind of stumbling around this fiery hell landscape, and T-Rex comes out. And of course, these are protagonists from episode 1, where T-Rex munches a Pachycephalosaur. But here they just sort of almost acknowledge each other and then move away. And it's really subtle, but really hits the emotion.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. There's sometimes trying to push too much behavior is not needed. Simplicity is your friend, especially in moments where their entire world, they're just trying to survive. They're not even trying, they're sort of reeling. And I think the simplicity of that scene is really powerful all the way through.
How much do you draw on, I mean, particularly for you, Jamie, how much do you draw on what you've seen in the natural world when you are helping design these sequences?
Yeah, that's a discussion we have quite often are they acting, are they behaving naturally? Are they behaving realistically? And we just want people to empathise and to believe that they're real creatures. So we try to use examples we've seen before, I've filmed or we've observed before, and bring that together to make them a fully rounded creature that's not a monster, that is believable, and then people can empathise with when they're watching the stories unfold.
Very good. Did you ever feel under pressure bringing the dinosaurs back to life?
Yeah, absolutely. You work on a show that is by its nature iconic. People love dinosaurs. There's a lot of people who enjoy digging into the paleontology of it. And the irony is, if we do our job properly, you kind of don't notice. If you immerse in the story and you're not thinking about the fact that these are visual effects dinosaurs, then we've done our job brilliantly. And hopefully that is what the show is. Hopefully you can just enjoy the journey of these amazing creatures and not be thinking about the fact that we've done whatever we've done in the background for tens of thousands of hours to bring it to screen.
I mean, I think that's almost true of the whole process. Like the producer-directors, if you put too many fingerprints on it, you're going to take people out of the moment. And if you do too extravagant camera work, you're going to take people out of the moment. So is that also part of your thought process when you're on location?
Yeah, we're trying to get people to have empathy with the creatures and to be believable without showing off ourselves. We don't want them to notice what the camera's doing.
I think that's the aim, is really to lock people in and just to take them on an incredible journey and have a lot of fun with it as well.
Some viewers have noticed a few Easter eggs in the series. I suppose the most obvious one is the Anchiornis, that is a little throw into the Spider-Verse.
The Spider-Verse, yeah, that's a great shot.
Yeah, Anchiornis' claws are on the branch and the bark comes off. Is that all VFX? Is that some practical? And how do you decide what's going to be which?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those conversations are always interesting. And in a case like that, we're like, yeah, this is great. We can make a practical branch, can blow those bits off. It'll be great. And it's relatively straightforward. And obviously there's anti-drag, for which we built a fantastic big model for all those, really close-up shots of skis getting dragged through the mud and the moss and through the riverbed. I think it ends up being fantastic in the show.
I mean, it's that sort of practical effects versus, what we do with VFX, and certainly in episode 1 there's a scene where Proconthus nathus is down by the water and gets grabbed by one of the sort of reptilian predators of the time. And that shot, actually, interesting enough, is a mixture, which we did some on-camera sort of splashing scenes. There's VFX water, there's a plate, a location plate, which is real. We've added the dinosaur, but there's quite a lot of work in that shot if you sort of break it down.
Yeah, I mean, that is a combination of elements then. There's a couple of archive bits in there. There's me in the water with a plank hitting the water. Yeah. And then obviously visual effects water, because the actual ripples up the beach and stuff, we had to do that part of the interaction. So there's always going through our mind how is the best combination of things and what's going to be the most effective.
So another shot that must have had that level of complexity where practical meets visual effects is the footprint shot in episode 2.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that studio motion control, LiDAR and ground rebuilt from Canada. There was a beautiful footprint built on set with rain bars. So it's an amalgam of everything. It covers time. It's got Jamie's work, it's got Nick's work. And again, very different from what we'd done previously and stylistically on Life on Our Planet.
Yeah, if you look at that footprint shot and then you see the studio, it was a huge sort of studio rig that Jolien and Jamie and put together, and very, very complicated.
Yeah.
But the result is seamless when you see it. We've used so many different techniques, and we've used miniatures as well. There's a fantastic example in episode 3. We've got this sunken forest with the jellyfish floating through it. It's really hard to find a location like that with the right water visibility, with trees submerged. It's almost impossible. So by putting the miniature in a tank and actually building the set, we were able to create basically Amber, who was the director, her vision, on camera. And then we needed to add jellyfish to it. So that was then, augmented with
yeah, it's a lovely
VFX.
marriage of shooting something that looks great and plausibly like a sunken forest without the expense of us making it, but us augmenting that with, live action sort of CG creatures to make it feel like it was really a real place.
Yeah, I think the end result is completely believable and pretty cool.
Yeah.
What do you hope people will take away from the series?
I hope people just take away that there's some amazing stories, and we've told, the amazing characters, amazing animals, and living these really dramatic lives, and that they're excited about the dinosaurs.
Certainly, for me, I hope people sort of engage with it, that the dinosaurs, they weren't just these big ferocious icons. They had families. They struggled. The series starts as dinosaurs are this big. They're the underdog, and we see a side of their story that we haven't seen before, really. So for me, it's the variety and the vulnerability as well as the ferociousness. They almost didn't make it. They were up against massive climatic problems too. The planet was throwing everything at them, and they made it 170 million years, which is absolutely nuts, the amount of time.
Yeah. But I think what's fantastic is you get a feeling that there's a full ecosystem. You get tiny Heterodontosaurus, and he's there with these massive sauropodian creatures at the same time. And so you feel there was a real world that every character had its own sort of story and position in that. And as Nick said, not everything is a great big scary monster. It's fantastic, just to be able to tell their stories.
I mean, we only did a fraction of them.
Yeah, and stuff's being discovered all the time. I mean, by the time you've made a show like the Dinosaurs, there are half a dozen or more new dinosaurs and new science to cover. Yeah. So the story doesn't really end. That's the thing for us. By the time we've finished, some of the science is bound to be out of date, and our apologies if that has happened. Yeah. But that's the nature of it.
Okay, well look, thanks to Jonathan, Nick and Jamie, but thanks also, of course, to all the other people who worked on the series, a total of 708 people altogether. But a particular shout out to the team at Amblin Documentaries, in particular, Daryl, Justin, and of course, Steven Spielberg. An absolute dream team, and I hope, it shows. But I'll let you be the judge of that. The series is now streaming on Netflix, so take a look.